Welcome to Think Tank. I'm Steve Adubato, and we're in fact coming to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio in beautiful Newark, New Jersey. This edition of Think Tank looks at STEM education, global citizenship. Now, who do we have to talk about this on Think Tank but four of the most successful, terrific educators you will find? Let me introduce them. Jennifer Bariso is a technology teacher at Robert Erskine and Peter Cooper Elementary Schools in
Ringwood, New Jersey.
Nikki Silva is a Milken Award honoree and third grade teacher at Nathan Hale School, where?
Carteret, New Jersey.
Patricia Smyers is a 2019 Hudson County Teacher of the Year and fifth grade math teacher at Clareton Elementary School, where?
Secaucus.
Ikechukwu Onyema is in fact a chemistry teacher at East Orange Campus High School Global Learning Fellows. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, when we created this whole idea for Think Tank, my idea, the idea of the folks here at the Caucus Educational Corporation and our partners at NJTV was, let's have a conversation with New Jersey-based people from this region about issues that in fact have national implications, trends that are national. It seems to me that the whole question of the way we teach them, science, technology, engineering, math education, and global learning isn't just a New Jersey issue. It's a national issue. Make the case.
Well, first of all, I'll start with teaching globally.
What does that mean, by the way?
Global education is about, when my students leave my classroom, they need to know that they're not just residents of East Orange. There's a much wider state, there's a much wider country, there's a much wider world. They're competing with all of those folks, and they're going to need to work together, collaborate with those folks to actually improve the world that we live in. That's what I mean by global.
Let me push back on a little bit in a positive way.
Sure.
It just seems to me that one of the challenges in teaching global citizenship, and that citizens in kindergarten, fifth grade, high school, wherever, that one of the challenges we have, and if I'm wrong, push back and tell me, is that so much of our political discourse in our nation is provincial, is chopped up, is bifurcated, is polarizing, and in fact, there are more and more, it seems like, folks who don't want to know about the rest of the world and only want to know about the world they are in and the people. Why are you shaking your head?
Yes.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, jump in.
I just think that there's a generation where they're focusing on themselves and they need to know that what they do is going to affect them in the greater scheme. So it's just learning good citizenship and everything like that.
But Trish, you have your students connect with students, a partner school in Ghana.
Yes, that is correct.
Listen, I'm not making this political. I want to keep this about education, but
Yes.
I'm arguing that the public discourse makes it harder for some to think that being a global citizen is important and that teachers should be teaching it, you say?
I do believe that teachers need to teach it. We need to have our students connect with experts and community members. We need to talk. I let them even ask questions through my own Twitter. But we Skype with classrooms. I'm trying to set it up with all 50 states. We do a mystery Skype.
How receptive are other teachers, other educators?
Very receptive. I find I have a great online PLN. I think
PLN.
PLN.
No jargon here on Think Tank.
Personal Learning Network.
Go ahead.
Where, you know, there are some people that don't realize that outside the district walls, you can learn so much from one another just through social media. Never mind my organizations that I belong to. But most of my ideas I get from other, collaborating with others.
I agree. I
And
think
Nikki,
that
jump
you
in.
really need to branch out into the community even. I teach at elementary level.
What grades?
Third grade.
Okay, break it down. Give us an example of something you are teaching your students that helps them be better, quote unquote, global citizens.
We have a philanthropy project. We work with the veterans in Carteret. So it's kind of branching outside of the school walls because learning doesn't just take place in the classroom, as we all know, but learning takes place outside. And I think it's so important for them at any level to know that the community members are there to help them, and there's heroes that are outside of their classroom. So I feel like even branching out just into the community for a small group, and then from there they could see, globally how important it is of what's going on.
The greatest joy that I've had so far this year was having a student teacher. And with my student teacher, we plan each lesson every day. As a chemistry teacher, we just finished teaching a molecular compounds unit about covalent bonds. The quick and dirty of it is it's about sharing electrons, right? sharing. Okay.
I didn't do well. I was political science and media major, but go ahead.
So it's about elements sharing electrons, but just to give you an example about how we tried to extend it beyond just the particulars of those chemical bonds. We asked them to relate it to sharing. Should societies force those with more resources to share them with those that are less fortunate to create more stability in the world? Wow. And we had an incredible discussion about taxes, about welfare, homelessness. And
about being empathetic.
About being empathetic. And then we brought it back to the chemistry. So how does this relate to chemistry, guys? Oh, it's about sharing electrons. And so that's a way to bring it in when it's tough to bring it in sometimes with some of the units I'm teaching.
Sure. The term social emotional learning, okay? Yes. Is that what EK is talking about right now?
I truly believe so. Actually, just in our STEM lesson, some of the student groups were not quite getting along, so two of my girls coded a cardboard box.
Now, our daughter talks to me about coding. Could you define it?
It's basically computer language telling a key on a keyboard what to do, so what action to take. So they actually have brass fasteners on a robot, and they used Makey and Scratch, which are kid versions of coding.
So what was the problem here?
They were not getting along, so when they push the button, it gives them a little quote to, a positive affirmation. And it was just their idea to create this, and so it's just part of our STEM now. So hold on,
and excuse me for interrupting. Jennifer, you do the coding thing as well.
Yes, I do.
Talk about kindergartners?
Kindergartners.
Can you just tell us how? With 5 and 6 year olds?
Very, very basic. We don't even get on the computer right away. I put paper arrows on the floor, and I tell them to follow directions. And my main message is basically follow the directions, and if there's something wrong, we debug it or fix the mistake. And it's all about making mistakes being okay, not being intimidated by making mistakes and correcting them in an environment where everybody's going to help you. So it's bringing it down to a very basic level.
I'm curious about something. As you're all talking about, you all have a teaching philosophy, right? An approach to teaching. It's developed over time, influenced by, I'm sure, your experience as students, experienced by the mentors that you have had. But my question is this: to what degree in the educational profession, when it comes to, let's just say, teaching STEM and global learning, to what degree do you believe there's a national movement, trend, if you will, amongst a significant number of educators to really ask the question, how should we be teaching these things in a more compelling, engaging way that has a greater impact on students? To what? I know it's a long-winded question, but I'm curious about this. Go ahead.
So, Steve, you introduced me as a chemistry teacher. I have learned to amend that, to say I teach chemistry, but more importantly, I teach students. And when we talk about social emotional learning, something else I want to bring to the conversation is that a lot of our students, particularly in some of the urban areas, they've endured a lot of traumas that show up in the classrooms. And if I come in there and I only focus on the content, I'm going to miss
Let
that.
people know. I don't want people to assume they think that they know.
Homelessness, divorces,
Poverty,
hunger,
violence,
sexual abuse, all kinds of abuse.
And how does that impact, in your view, EK?
Violence. I can keep going.
How does that impact how you believe they need to be taught to help them the most?
I take time, and I've decided I'm going to do it once a month. Some call it social emotional learning. I call it restorative practices. What does that mean? Because that's more jargon. It can look a lot of different ways, but oftentimes we form a circle, and there's some kind of question that involves some part of their personal life that we can engage in for a few minutes. So I get to learn about my students, so I can connect the work, the content, to their lives and make it more compelling.
We expect a lot from teachers. Nikki, as I'm listening to EK, you do something with your third grade students. You have some sort of cool down thing?
Yes.
What is that?
A cool down book bag. So what happens is if you're teaching a lesson and a student is just not focused, for everything that you've mentioned, if they're coming in with information from home or something that happened the night before. I'm in Carteret, correct?
Not urban, but not, let's just say, if you don't, Carteret, let's just say this. It's not particularly wealthy. It's a working middle class community.
Working middle class, yes. I grew up in Carteret, so it's a full circle.
You know it well.
Yeah, I do know it well. And, some things have changed, but this is, my hometown I'm teaching in, and I love it.
You love teaching in your hometown?
I love it.
In part because it's your hometown?
Yes.
Go ahead.
But I just love the town. I love the Rambler spirit, you know? So we made this cool down book bag. I first started out as a cool down center. And I had went to a workshop where they talked about all these different strategies you could use, like a pinwheel, you could blow on it, a squishy ball. I'm sure we've all used those before.
I have one in my office. I should use it. Frankly, I should be using it more. Go ahead.
But students at this age, they need a positive model of how to calm themselves down. And I think it's important to educate the whole child because not everyone has that positive role model. Like growing up, my parents were my biggest cheerleaders, and I want to be that for my students because not everybody has that.
But that was your parents. You are the teacher. You are the cheerleader for your students?
I think every student needs that.
Oh,
And-
1 second. Excuse me. You're everything?
We're pretty much, we do a lot, you know, we're their cheerleader, we're their
Guidance
confidant,
counselor.
we're their, you know,
friend.
their friend, we're their enemy sometimes too, you know, and it's just, we have to be everything for almost every child during the course of the day.
Do you get paid enough?
I don't look at it as a paycheck, to be honest with you. I know
I didn't
everybody
ask
would
that.
say,
I
I
did
would
not
take
ask
less.
that.
I would take less, don't tell them. But
Listen, all I heard was, we do everything. And
Yeah.
then I heard a description of it. I just asked, do you think you're being paid well enough to do that?
I do a lot of things for free, but that's...
Okay. Okay. I'm just
that's-
curious.
I
think we love what
because
we do.
I know you love what you do,
Yeah,
or
I
you
do a
wouldn't be
lot
here in the
after
room.
school,
We got to
so-
go to break, but I'm curious about this. From a national perspective, do you think that our country, that most citizens appreciate the value of someone in the classroom doing, quote, everything for their kids?
Yeah, so to answer that question from a different lens, if you look around the country and you see a lot of the teacher strikes, we're hitting the streets,
Yes.
we're advocating on our own behalf, we're expressing what we want and need. If the folks in power would just listen to what we're asking for, that would go a long way. We're not asking for, you know, millions, but
Right.
we're asking you to listen, not just to the compensation package, but also what our students need. So a lot of these strikes, they're not just about money, they're also about resources, classroom size, et cetera. Give us counselors, all right? Give us the stuff we need to do the best job that we know we need to do.
Well, our job on Think Tank, as we listen to EK, is to have a meaningful policy discussion about these issues, not just simply to celebrate 4 extraordinary educators, and that, in fact, you are, but to ask the question, what do we need to do as a society, as a country, to create an environment where we have more teachers like this, more educators like this? This is Think Tank. This is why we're here, and this is why we're thrilled that you're watching. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more Think Tank with Steve Adubato programs and to listen to Think Tank with Steve Adubato, the podcast, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Welcome back to Think Tank. I'm Steve Adubato, talking with 4 extraordinary educators from across the state and the national implications of teaching STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and global learning. I'm curious about something. What inspired you to be the teacher you are today?
Well, I actually changed because I've been teaching for 26 years, but since I went back for my master's and did work with NASA Explorer Schools, I had a transformation that I realized students need a voice, they need to be innovative. I had wonderful professors, and I wound up working with them, and an astronaut who Skyped with my students, and just to see those students light up when they actually talk to an expert or create something and have a voice. And even now we're trying to do a global warming, show that they're going to put on my website.
How exciting.
I don't know who's more excited, me or them, but we just learned from the governor's wife that
The First Lady.
The First Lady was
Tammy
in a
Murphy,
meeting
right.
for the technology review, and the Go Green New Jersey. I'm doing this. She's inspired us. So
Before I let you go, is it true that you let some of your students actually teach the class?
yes, I do.
Okay, no, do you do that?
I do too,
You
yes.
do that.
I love it.
How do you do that?
It's the best to give up your power and take a step back and
Give up your
watch.
power? Like let
Yes.
somebody sit in this seat and take over this show?
You should do it.
I should.
Yes.
Okay, that's in theory, not in practice. But hold on a
Thing
second.
around.
When you actually, first time you did that, what was the reason you said, Nikki, I'm going to give up control, power, whatever, let the students teach but know that it could go any way.
And that's the best feeling, because that's the highest level of learning is when students could teach one another. And to see that in my classroom, those were some of my best lessons, and I didn't teach them.
What inspired you to be the educator you are?
The educators I've had in the past have really motivated me and inspired me to be who I am. And I feel like I'm still being shaped by administrators and teachers that I work with.
Jennifer, what inspired you?
Well, I came back
Who or
to
what?
I have a great administrator who pushes me every day. The new maker environment where you're making things and not just learning on the computer, so you're actually building things. The coding culture and everything kind of inspired me to reinvent a lot of my lessons. I have students teach each other as well. They sit together on the computer, work through a coding exercise. And sometimes they can speak their own language to a certain degree, and they find more success that way. And that's the bottom line, is we want them to find success.
It's the most fascinating time to be teaching global learning and STEM.
You know, I often think about my experience as a high school student, and I think about what I was missing as
Where'd
a
you go
high
to
school
school?
student. I actually went to Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Sure. It's got a good school, good reputation.
Amazing school, but you know there are different experiences depending on who you are, what classes you are exposed to, et cetera. And I often think about the positives as well as what was missing.
What
And
inspired you to be the educator you are?
I want to be that person that I feel like I needed at that time.
Wow.
I want to be that person. I want to try to do some of that work.
Because?
I remember what it was like. And also I remember when I got to college and when I just got into the quote unquote real world, I remember thinking, man, I could have been exposed to this a little bit earlier. So why not try to create some of those experiences for my students?
What's the whole South Africa thing you're doing?
So the NEA Foundation, the
National
Teachers Union,
Education
National Education Association,
right?
yeah, they've got this
Did you get a grant?
awesome fellowship. Yes, they
Okay.
paid for 50 teachers from around the country to go to South Africa, both Cape Town and Johannesburg last summer. And it was an amazing time. I had a chance to visit a bunch of schools, talk to educators, talk to students, and just really do some compare and contrast about what they're doing over there and what we're doing over here.
Give me one thing you took from there that has value over here.
The most important thing that I took, so we went to a school in Cape Town, and the administrators that we spoke to were also teachers.
Wow.
They also
Hold on.
taught a class, so there was a certain perspective that they never lost. You know, and I'm not throwing shade on our administrators now because they do an amazing job, but I think there's something that you always have on your mind when you still teach at least one class.
Are you concerned about potentially administrators in our country, in our state, being removed from the reality of the classroom? Because that's what you implied. You concerned about that?
I think sometimes they have so much on their plate that they're just not as visible, not necessarily even in my school, but what I'm even hearing from everyone is that they're not in the classroom, seeing what's going on in the trenches.
Are we set up for them to be
No.
what EK described as happening in South Africa? Are we set up for
No,
them
we're not.
to be that hybrid educational professional as opposed to, I've got all these responsibilities, I've got to run this school, I've got to handle the finances, whatever it is?
At our school, our administrators are always in our classrooms.
Oh, is that true?
Yes,
Okay.
and sometimes if we're doing a lesson, they chime in. So I don't feel that there's that much of a scare for that to happen.
Let me
And I
try.
have had that too as well. They do come in.
Can I talk
and
about
give some
parents for a
awesome-
second? I'm sorry for interrupting. We have a daughter in the elementary school, in the public school system in Montclair, wonderful school system, and 2 high school students, actually at Seton Hall Prep right now, but educated in the Montclair public schools. I'm curious about something, and I've struggled as a parent with how much. I was texting the other day to one of the teachers about one of the issues, and I try not to let our kids know how much I'm texting and talking to their teachers or guidance counselors, and my wife said, back off, leave it alone. I have a different philosophy. It's not about me, it's not about my kids, it's not about my wife, but I am curious. Any best advice for parents who want to be helpful to our kids, but not be the parent who's so overbearing that we don't let our kids grow and make mistakes and whatever? They don't know what they don't know. And also sometimes they're not telling us straight up what tests are coming. You get the point. Help me here. I'm talking for every parent who's concerned about this right now. Go.
I think when they're younger, you kind of have to be on top of them. You don't want to be a lawnmower parent who's like paving the way for them. and making everything easy. You don't want to be like on top of them like the helicopter mom, but you have to find somewhere in between. You got to be there. You got to make sure they're doing their work, help them with their work, even if you don't know how to do it themselves.
And the online operation, going online allows us to follow that more than ever. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Exactly. But I think, you reach a point where you have to say, you know what, it's time that they do it themselves. Like I have 2 seniors in high school now. And when they have a problem, like you go talk to the teacher.
You tell them to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said, then if you reach a wall, if you reach a problem, I'll get involved. But you figure it out.
Well, let me ask you this. All of you are involved in technology and science, et cetera, STEM. Do you advocate us as parents being more assertive and direct with our kids about how much time they are spending on their devices?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And we should be watching what they're doing on their screen.
Define watching.
You wouldn't put a little
I
child.
got a 16-year-old up on a 3rd floor. I go out and he goes, Dad, I'm busy. I want to see what's on there. He's like, are you kidding me?
Oh, I stalk my child. No,
I'm sorry, you what? Georgette, check this out. You stalk your child?
I do. I want to know. I want to know what he's doing on the first time we ever had a social media account. I made it with him. It just like New York City. I wouldn't put him there alone. So we're going to start together. We're going to hold hands, and then we're going to slowly let go of the reins. But I think the schools need to help with that. But I think the parents sometimes aren't realizing what's going on in their child's bedroom or Xbox.
What about 3rd graders? I'll come back to you, Kate. What about 3rd graders? Are they using devices? Our daughter was she was dancing. She's in 3rd grade. Olivia was dancing last night. Did they know the whole thing? Where they show you the steps?
Yes.
She's really good when they show her the steps. But she's on a lot, more than I'd like. Do we limit it?
I would definitely limit it. I think there's so much to offer outside or playing board games or even playing in 3rd grade, play with Barbie dolls. I played with Barbies for years when I was younger. I think that imaginative play is so important.
I also want to be clear, she plays soccer, baseball, basketball. Okay, I just want to get you go.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Infuse yourself. Infuse yourself. Put yourself in their lives, and do not hesitate to curtail the amount of time that they spend on these devices, because left to themselves, they'll be at it all day and all night. I see it in the classroom. If I don't say stop, they'll be on it. But I've also seen the benefits of when I need to even collect those cell phones and say, we're going to have a certain kind of experience today that the cell phones are going to hinder. So please don't. And also, as a parent, please, at least maybe this is colored by my experience in my particular education context, but I encourage parents to show up to as much as you can.
Show up.
Show up to as much as you can.
Like just show up?
Well, to the meetings, arrange appointments, but show up. Yeah, just be present. Be present. We need to see you present, because that home school connection is actually, there's a distance. I think there's a significant distance. I have never been to my student's home before, right? There's a significant, and I need to know what's happening there. So to the extent that they can come to us, that's great. But if we can also create opportunities to come to them, that's also
Final
great.
words. Educators are clearly our greatest resource. Teaching the children that we care about the most. One piece of advice to everyone right now watching, New Jersey and nationally, as to what it means for our kids in the future when it comes to STEM and global learning. What's one thing we need to do to get better at?
Watch labels. STEM should be for all children, not just a gifted child, not just one's population, every culture, every background, every school.
One piece of advice.
Meet every student where they are, every entry point that they're coming in at, and encourage them and guide them to reach even farther than they thought they would be.
One piece of advice.
I think that start building blocks early and build on them again from wherever they are, and let them make mistakes. Let them correct their own mistakes.
Absolutely.
Don't jump in and do it for them. Let them figure it out.
EK, finally.
STEM is definitely for everyone, and it's not just for a nice salary at the end. It's because there are a lot of challenges that we need to solve, and we can use that to solve these challenges.
I want to thank all of you for what you do every day for our children in public schools. You're extraordinary, and we respect and appreciate your work every day. Thank you. That's it for this edition. For everyone at Think Tank, I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you for watching, but most importantly, make sure that you think for yourself. Catch you next time.
My husband and I spent more than 30 years in the public schools. We're retired, but we like to stay involved.
You think he's going to learn to fly?
We're just as busy now as in our teaching days. The same goes for a lot of the retired educators we know. Let me see you all flap your wings like you're penguins learning to fly. Teaching is all about building relationships, and that never goes away. Because once a teacher, always a teacher. We're Ed and Miriam, and we are proud to be New Jersey educators.
Also brought to you by Summit Medical Group, a physician-owned multi-specialty medical practice serving northern and central New Jersey in 70 locations. And by the Turl Fund, supporting right from the start NJ.